Hello friends. For today's video, I wanted to go through what were, for me, the biggest surprises of the year. And I did a similar style video of this, but there were some differences between the books I wanted to talk about today and the books I talked about there. So I did another video where I'm primarily focusing on new releases from this year that were among my most anticipated, and whether or not they met, exceeded, or just kind of fell beneath the hype that I feel like we collectively had placed on them. And it can fall into a similar camp of feeling surprised by them because if you were expecting to love them and then you didn't, that is rather shocking sometimes. So I'll have that video linked if you're interested in seeing that. But jumping into today's video, I'm going to start with a couple that are not fantasy, and then the rest will be fantasy. And the two that I'm going to begin with would be The Flatshare and Yellowface. This is the second time that I've said Yellowface, and I have faced it backwards. It is apparently a weird curse that is going to happen, I guess, every time I hold it up. We'll start with The Flatshare. So it just sounds really cutesy, and it doesn't necessarily seem like the most unique of plot lines. I feel like this actual plot has been done in a variety of genres, actually, which is that these two people, they are living within the same space, but they never cross paths. And this is a contemporary romance. So the idea is that there's this girl who is a woman. I guess she's not young. She's not like 12. But anyway, there's a young lady who is kind of down on her luck. She experienced a breakup, and as you're progressing through the story, you're recognizing there's actually a lot of trauma associated with that breakup that she is starting to recognize as she is healing from it. But regardless, she doesn't have a lot of money, and she doesn't really know where she's going to live, but her ex is insistent, like, you need to get out. So she moves into this place because it's affordable, and the setup is that it's pretty small, but the person who is usually living there work nights. So they're home during the day on the hours that she would be at work, so they'd never cross paths, but they sleep in the same bed, they use the same bathroom, they cook in the same kitchen. And so what they start to do is leave notes to each other, and these notes eventually lead to them kind of becoming friends. And then from there, they eventually meet, and it's actually incredibly sweet. The way in which the author wrote the two perspectives is drastically different. And as a fan of epic fantasy, whenever you get a multi-perspective story and you see those very stark differences in the characters' voices from one chapter to the next, I usually really like that. And so I was very pleasantly surprised to see that in a contemporary romance story. So for the writing itself and the presentation of the characters, I was already really impressed, but it was the exploration of the trauma for both characters, as the male character in the book is somebody whose brother has been wrongfully imprisoned, and he's a nurse, and so a lot of the patients that he is with have a lot of really moving, sweet, but also sad stories, and seeing them in the book was wonderful. I just really, really was impressed by this one, and I have all of you to thank because it was your recommendation that led me to pick this up, and I'm so glad I did. It's a cut above for me a lot of the other things that I have picked up this year, and it's the kind of story that makes me glad for when I dip my toes outside of fantasy and into other genres, because I was really moved by that one. And it's the kind of story that one of my favorite things about dipping my toes in other genres is it really highlights both the pros and cons of fantasy. And for me, I'm like, I feel like fantasy writers like maybe read books like that to see the ways in which you can explore just the human experience and have it be both a sweet and powerful thing without feeling need to, I don't know. I guess I don't know. It's just, there's something about just how, I know it sounds cheesy, but just like how human that book was that I really resonated with. I thought it was very sweet. And then not sweet at all, Yellowface. This one I have talked pretty extensively about. The reason I'm going to talk about it being a surprise, though, is just that I didn't dislike and hate the Poppy War. I just didn't really find myself wanting to continue after reading that first book. And then I read Babel, and I think a lot of the themes in that book are really powerful. I do feel like with such an intense story and with how important those themes are, I actually feel like I would have liked it to have been expanded because there's just so much to say with those themes. And as of right now, it's a standalone. I feel like it's left open to where we could see a sequel, but I don't know if we ever will. But I have kind of like this, I don't want to call it a love-hate relationship with that book, but there are just certain things that I feel like it could have done even more of. And so for me, it was like, okay, I haven't found that book by R.F. Kuang yet that I really feel like is the one that I'm going to connect with. But I still really like her I like her writing, and I like what she goes for, and I like that she is willing to try such different things from book to book. And so I'm like, well, Yellowface is so different from her other works. It's different in genre, it's different in tone, it's different in how the perspective is. And I had so much fun with it. Even when I first started, I was like, I don't know. And then the more we went, I'm like, oh no, I like this. I like this a lot. If you found that you liked Yellowface and you like just how everybody sucks in that book, if you like shows like Parks and Rec and The Office and the mockumentary style, but you're like, is there something that's a little bit more bitter and shows the negative side of people? If you haven't watched the show Veep, I would recommend that one. In a weird way, it's like the closest parallel I can think of to Yellowface, and that everyone is awful in that. Everyone's awful. And I really want to highlight, everyone is awful. I hate pretty much everybody in that show, but weirdly, I still quite liked it. The first 5 seasons. After that, I didn't think it was as good. Anyway, getting now into the fantasy books. So I'm just gonna grab whatever is in front of me and go in no particular order. We have Untethered Sky. This one was one of the biggest surprises for a similar reason to what I was describing with R.F. Kuang. So I read Jade City. I thought I would love Jade City. It was one of those books that had everything on my list, if you will. It's not like I have a literal list of like, books must have this for me to like them. But my general, I'm gonna like this checklist, that book had everything, and then I picked it up, and I didn't like it. I didn't really like it because of the characters. I still am like, oh, I bet if I picked up something else by Fonda Lee, though, that I'd really like it, because it really was just the characters, which isn't a fault of like the writing or the plot or anything like that. Just the characters, I'm like, it's weird because I was just describing how everybody sucks in Yellowface, but these people sucked with too much personality in a weird way, because I'm just like, I don't like Hilo and Shay's, and I'm sorry, because I know some of you love those characters, but they weren't for me. And so I was a little nervous going into Untethered Sky, especially when I heard it was a novella, because novellas are already a hard sell for me. I like the sitting and exploring and just being with characters. I really enjoy that. So picked up Untethered Sky, very unsure, and I really enjoyed this one. I quite liked basically everything about it. I liked her character, I liked the way the story was told, I liked that it didn't waste time, and it didn't feel the need to be more than it was. I thought the timing of and the pacing of everything was exactly what the story needed, and I liked how visual it all felt. I thought it was great, and it really surprised me for those reasons that I mentioned. I wasn't sure what I was going to get. I didn't know if I was going to like it being so short, and I was very impressed by it. After that, we have Divine Rivals. I have spoken about this quite a bit since I picked it up, so I don't want to waste your time and talk about it too extensively, but I really had seen a lot of hype for it. I was trying to avoid seeing specifics, as I think a lot of you know I try to avoid doing in general before I've picked a book up. And with this one, I just kept seeing the hype for it everywhere, and I just didn't think it could meet that hype. And I know this is kind of treading territory into the other video that I did, and that was the way I described that one. But it wasn't hype that I'd placed on it. It was outside hype. And so I really was like, I don't know, it'll probably be nice, but it'll probably be sweet and cute and a story that I enjoy. But the amount of love I have for this book, the amount of emotions I felt, I was so taken aback by it. And it was one of the only times that I didn't want to keep reading, because when we got to a peaceful, sweet moment in the book, I just wanted to stay there. I didn't want anything bad to happen to the characters, and that's sort of, I think, very revealing and very telling of how much you're invested in the story and how much you care when you're like, I know inevitably there's going to be something that makes this all fall apart and makes everything go wrong, because it's a story about war, and so something is going to happen, and I don't want anything to happen. I want them to just be happy for forever. And so I really was surprised at how much I ended up really liking that. Plus, the writing was chef's kiss. Just fantastic. After that, we have Immortal, Longings. This is one that is the exception to my rule. I did see people's thoughts ahead of time, and I saw pretty much only negativity. And I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. And then I was really surprised because I did, and nobody else seems to. And so I'm on repeat every time I bring this book up. That is what I say, but I liked it. I liked it quite a bit. And one of the things I've seen a lot of people say is in talking about her first books, the ones that kind of put Chloe Gong on the map, people are like, I can't believe this is the same author that gave us that. And I'm like, I mean, I can, but also I feel like it's better. So I just have the unpopular opinion all around, but I'm glad I did have the unpopular opinion because I liked it. Okay, I could have started the video with these because they're kind of the biggest surprise of the year for everybody, and that would be Fourth Wing, and I'm extending that to Iron Flame because I have indeed read this, and I have multiple things about these books that surprised me. So first off, before I even picked... Man, look how much chunkier this one is. Not necessary. Before I picked it up, in my anticipated releases, I was like, there's already a lot of ratings for this book, and it's kind of surprising, and everybody seems to be loving it, and the average rating is abnormally high. So I was already kind of like, well, we'll see. And then I picked it up, and I'm like, what's going on? And I'm not saying I actually think that there's some grand conspiracy and all the reviews are fake or anything. I believe lots of people like this series, and I understand because it's explosive, there's cool dragons, there's the angst, it's fast-paced, and I get it, and it's very accessible too, which I'm not trying to say that word in like a people only like these very basic books. I don't mean it like that at all, because I know sometimes I feel like the word accessible is used in a shady, condescending way. I like accessibility. I think it's great. But I just was confused because I'm like, to use a phrase my dad was fond of, like, it's not the greatest thing since sliced bread, but that's how it feels like we're treating it. So I was just taken aback because I'm like, I don't get it. It was basically my attitude as I was reading it. I was messaging my friends like, oh my gosh, since coming out, there's like thousands of ratings already, and everybody seems to be loving it. So I was surprised. And that surprise and that, like, oh my gosh, what is this phenomenon? It's what led me to pick up Iron Flame. And apparently people like this one a lot less than the first one. And I'm surprised by that too, because I'm like, it's like more of the same. Sorry, my voice I feel like is getting into an annoying register, but I feel like it's more of the same. So I'm just surprised all around because I don't know. I mean, they're fine. They're not the most unique thing in the world. I feel like I've read fantasy romance where I like the relationship building between the characters more. If you like it though, I'm so glad. And again, I just don't know how to say that without it coming across condescending. I really mean it. I swear. I'm glad that there are so many people that are coming to fantasy because of this book, that are coming to fantasy romance because of this, that their love of reading has been rekindled, or maybe they're discovering their love of reading because of these books, and I think that's amazing, and that's a good thing. Or you're a fantasy reader, and you read voraciously, and you picked it up, and it was a ton of fun, and you're like, I miss just reading fun, explosive books that are all the things I was saying about it before. I am legitimately happy that this book has clicked for so many people. It just hasn't clicked for me, and I feel... Well, one of my friends picked it up recently, so we've been talking about it, so I don't feel as alone anymore. But it's a phenomenon, and it's an interesting one to watch. Now switching back to a positive. I reread the Shades of Magic trilogy, and I was surprised because I liked it so much. And I feel almost the opposite about this from what I was just describing with Fourth Wing, where I feel like a lot of BookTube doesn't really love Shades of Magic. There was a lot of hype for it when it was first coming out. And then since then, it's felt like there's been this pushback of like, it's not as good as everybody is talking about. And there's also this, almost like this rhetoric of V.E. Schwab's ideas are good, but her stories aren't actually ever, like, there's not a good payoff for what the interesting idea is. And I disagree. I like this series a lot. I like these characters, which... They're very distinct characters, they have really distinct personalities, and sometimes those personalities are annoying. So I totally understand if you don't like these characters. I like them, I like this series, I like her writing, I flew through it, I had so much fun with it. I was so glad to be back in this world. I liked it even more than I did the first time, and I was not expecting that. I was truly fearful that I wasn't going to like it as much. And I also, this is one of those series that I've done an editions video for, where I go through all these different editions from foreign editions, special editions. And so if I hadn't liked it, then it would be like, but I have all these editions of it. And that would have kind of been embarrassing, I guess. But anyway, I did like it, and so I'm like, oh yay, now I love to just go look at all the different editions, be like, yeah, but look at Delilah Bard on this cover, and look at Kel on this cover, and like, look at the cool whatever. That's nothing to do with whether I liked it or not. It was a big surprise. I really wasn't expecting to love it as much as I did, but it got bumped up into one of my favorite series of all time, rereading it. And I know that is the unpopular opinion, but I love it. Now for a couple of new releases that I picked up this year that were early in the year, and that would be Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies and God Killer. I don't think I have to say too much because I have said a lot already all year about both of these, but I wasn't expecting to have as much fun with this one as I did. I liked the characters despite the fact that one of them is honestly pretty annoying but kind of endearing. And the main character I really like. I like her dog. I like how studious she is. I like that she's a little antisocial. And I just found the way that the Fae were incorporated into the story to be more folklore-oriented, which I missed. I feel like I haven't really seen something like that since things like Spinning Silver, or even the way that the creatures are in The Bear and the Nightingale. It was more along those lines, yet I would say cozier than those ones, because those are actually pretty frightening. And in this book, the Fae are frightening, but the feel of the story is cozy and sweet at the same time, and it was a mixture I wasn't expecting, but that I greatly enjoyed. And then God Killer, I just love this book. I love it so much. The main character was awesome. I really liked Skedaseth, I think is how you say his name. I felt like that's sort of an animal companion mythological creature done well, and I've missed that. I feel like we don't see that as often in fantasy anymore. I thought that the pacing was phenomenal. It was so tight. The world was really cool. I liked the writing. So I just thought everything about God Killer was great. And as I have said many a time, it's basically what if the Witcher series was more Geralt and Ciri. And I liked that and was not expecting to have that in God Killer. So I also, when I read it, I didn't even want to put it down to do any menial tasks. I was like, okay, I'll switch to my audiobook so that I can go to the bathroom or like make myself food or whatever it is I needed to do, because I didn't want to stop reading it. I wasn't expecting to just be that engrossed in that story. So really, really enjoyed it. That's it basically for some big surprises of this year. There's one additional one, which would be the Wishing Game. I won't go too in depth with that one, but the reason that one is like kind of an honorable mention is just that when I heard the synopsis, I was like, I think I'll like this. The only surprising thing was how emotional the book made me, but that one also was pretty surprising, but not maybe as much as the rest of these. Let me know what your biggest surprises were, both negative and positive, and if you are interested in seeing the other video that I mentioned, I'll have that linked, but thanks so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Bye.